why don't you get us started by just telling us who you are, how you got started in all this, and then if you want to, even go into maybe how you got your podcast going and where that all came from.
Yeah, sure. So, as Brendan said, my name is Herman Steuernagel, and I am an author. I've been writing I've been published for the last 4 years, but I've been writing since as long as I can remember. Kind of my earliest stories go back as far as grade two that I remember writing. But, I got into reading and writing from a young age, but I took a break kind of after college and didn't write anything for a very, very long time. And kind of, yeah, my writing journey kind of hit pause. I hadn't written anything long. I'd written kind of some short stories and started writing on some projects that never really went anywhere until I was the ripe age of 37, and I decided that actually, it's kind of a meandering story to get there. But what happened was I kind of sold the business that I was running at the time. Kind of left a stressful situation that I had, and I took up running. And some buddies of mine convinced me to do a half marathon with them. And if that doesn't sound like it has anything to do with writing, just bear with me for a little bit. It gets there. I basically went from, I mean, I've never been a runner in my life. I really went from couch to half marathon in 3 months. I ended up doing a half marathon with them. And really just because they convinced me to do it with them. And after I completed the half marathon, people were coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Herman, that's great. Congratulations. Way to kick something off your bucket list." And I was like, well, running wasn't really ever on my bucket list. It was just something my idiot friends made me do with them. So, but that got me to thinking. I had some extra spare time to do some things that I really actually wanted to do. So I thought, well, if I can put the effort into running, something I barely wanted to do, I should probably take the time and make the effort and actually do something that I've always wanted to do, which is write that novel. So from there, I finished the marathon. Actually, we ran the marathon end of October. It was 2019, and November 2019, I started putting down some ideas and started writing my first book, which is actually Lies the Guardian Style, which came out at the end of 2020. So, and from there, once I finished that first book, I realized, hey, this is something I'm capable of doing. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but just like kind of running a half marathon, I put the effort in and got through it. So from there, it was kind of off to the races, and I've been writing ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing how it's so like it's something you want to do so bad, but also writing is really hard. So it's
yeah,
sometimes hard to just like actually do it. you know?
yeah. And it's such an intimidating prospect when you've never done, especially if you've never done it before. To write, 3, 4, 500 pages just seems like such an overwhelming and daunting task that to actually sit down and put the time into it. And it's not just an evening; like you're taking a lot of time to put the story down and try to make it something that's readable and that other people are going to want to read, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember so I haven't published anything yet. I have a bunch of things kind of in the works, but I remember finishing the first draft of something for the first time,
yeah,
and it took so long to get there and it was such a struggle and I didn't know what I was doing, and it's horrible. Like the draft is completely unreadable, needs completely rewritten, but it was like, whoa, I actually like that was so encouraging to just get to a finish line of it,
for sure. Yeah, and that's exactly it. And then once you get there, and once you get that first draft done, and you get it edited, and you realize this is something I can do, then you know that you can do it again. And I've talked to so many other authors who, you get through that first book, and it takes them, 1, 3, 5, 10 years, and then their next book takes them, 3 to 6 months because they've overcome that hurdle, right? And they
Mhm.
know they can do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So why don't you so how'd that get into the podcast then? Where did that all start at?
Yeah, so I started the podcast pretty much exactly a year ago, and I was I never thought I'd be a podcaster. It's not something that I ever sought out to do. Unlike writing, which is something I'd always wanted to do. But I had been on a couple of podcasts myself, talking about my book Eclipse that it came out at that time. And one of the podcasts that I had been on actually shut down like pretty quickly after I was on it. And I was thinking about it afterwards. I'm like, oh, it was kind of too bad because I didn't know too many podcasts that were science fiction and fantasy based, especially in the indie author sphere. And I thought, well, that's kind of too bad that avenue for writers to kind of get the word out about their books. it's gone. And I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, would I be crazy for adding something else to my plate and
Hmm.
expecting her to say yes? But
Yeah.
she didn't. She was like, no, that sounds like a great idea, and you could call it the greatest podcast in the multiverse. And I was like, okay, well, that seals it. I have to do this now.
Yeah.
And the reason she said that was because so the Bartender Between Worlds is kind of part of a larger series that actually the next book coming out in that series is called The Greatest Pub in the Multiverse. And I had that title already back then a year ago, and I was working on that book. So it's like, well, that actually really fits so perfectly well that I've got to kind of give this a go. It feels like it's meant to be. So I called up a couple of my friends and said, "Hey, would you be interested in being interviewed on this?" I didn't expect it to last more than the 10 episodes I had lined up at the beginning with some author friends that I knew. But here I am a year later, and we're still talking with other authors, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah, it is similar, slightly different, but kind of similar. When I started doing this, was I kind of looked around and was like, there isn't a whole lot of those like sci-fi fantasy for indie authors.
yeah, exactly.
And I'd grown the YouTube channel to, decent size, still small, but it's got some people.
Yeah,
And so I just thought, hey, maybe, this is big enough to where it might offer those authors something. And same thing, it was like, you know, and then maybe other writers can get value out of it.
yeah, exactly. And that was really where what I wanted was for people to have a platform to talk about their books and really just even chat with other people about science fiction and fantasy because I don't really have that circle of friends in the real life that offer that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I will have to say it's one of the best things I've done recently because I've met so many cool people. Like, I've just really enjoyed all of a sudden I felt like I entered this world, and like that's how we met, to do this.
Yeah,
Like, I just feel like all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I have this whole new group of friends that I didn't have before.
100%. I totally feel the same way. And like over the course of the last year, I mean, I don't have a huge following on my channel, but that's really what's kept me going is the people I've met, the people I continue to talk to, and the friends that I've made. That was not something I ever expected to come out of podcasting, was making new friends.
Hmm.
But I'm still in touch with a lot of the guests I've had on the show, and been able to chat with them and ask them questions and bounce ideas off of them, and it's really been really an unseen benefit that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool.